Okay, welcome to this video where I'm going to teach you the basics of writing the backend of a Telegram bot that we can connect to a bot service on Telegram, and then we can drive the logic and the reactivity of this bot. Okay. The way that works with Telegram is that Telegram has an open API, an application programming interface for developers to connect to the services that run the Telegram bots on the Telegram servers, and then be able to connect to the bot itself and write the code that will drive its behavior. Okay. If you're interested in how that actually works, and if you are perhaps a bit more technically proficient, you can read how the actual underlying implementation of the Telegram API works. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do here. However, in my opinion, for entry-level people, it's a little advanced. So typically what we do when we want to write code for bots is using code examples or using libraries that other people have already developed to wrap up the connectivity to those APIs that I just mentioned. So long story short, there is the core API for connecting to Telegram bots, and there's libraries that make connecting to that API much easier, which is what we're going to do in this tutorial. Okay, since I'm going to be writing this tutorial in Node.js, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the Node.js version, and you can see that there are actually several versions of Node.js libraries that you can use to connect to the Telegram bot. I think my favorite so far is the Node Telegram bot API. So this one here. And I think that's the one that I'm going to be using for these examples. However, this is my particular choice because I have some strange affinity for Node.js and JavaScript, but very likely, as you may know, Python is a very popular programming language as well. So there are also a lot of Python libraries that help you make this easy. And also, I just recently ran into the Telegram bot for C#, which in this channel we are also kind of excited about. So perhaps in some future videos I can write something in C# that we can use to connect Unity or to connect Grasshopper to a Telegram bot, and perhaps use the Telegram bot to connect to control geometry in Grasshopper or to control motion in Unity. I'm actually kind of excited, so I think we're going to do this in further videos down the road. But for this immediate series, we're going to be using Node.js, and we're going to be using the Telegram bot API that we have here. Okay, so I'm going to be following this example, and I'm going to be teaching you how to do this. So let's get started by creating a Node.js project and implementing a simple version of a Telegram backend, which will be starting with an echo server, for example. Let's take a look at that. The first thing that I'm going to do is I just came here to my desktop. I created a folder called pcamp testbot, and if I double click on the folder, we can see that it's empty. It doesn't have anything. You have seen in my previous videos on this playlist how to initialize a Node.js project. So we're going to follow those instructions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a terminal here on my folder. And this is going to look something like this. But if you don't know how to do that, or if you don't have on your shell, you don't have it programmed so that you can right click and open a terminal, you're just welcome to click here and then type, for example, PowerShell, which is the shell that I like these days for Windows a lot. And then you can copy the address here, where this is, and type cd and paste this, and then you will be now on the folder that we are going to initialize this Node.js project on. So once we're here, as you saw in the previous videos, what we can do is I can type here npm initialize init, and then I can go through the instructions. So yeah, the package name is going to be testbot version 1, whatever. Entry point is going to be, yeah, index.js is a good file. Let me call it bot.js actually. because it feels like it's nicer. I'm then just going to say yes to everything, and you can see that the package file shows up here. So I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code editor, and I'm going to drop that file in there. So I'm just going to drop this file here, and we can see that we have the basic structure, the basic package for this project. So we're good there. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is remember that we were going to be using the Node Telegram bot API. This is a module, it's a package, that it's a library that has all the functionality to make it very easy to connect to this bot. The way we install this in our project is like we have seen before in previous videos, using the package manager and then installing the library. So I'm just going to dock this here and type on my terminal, I'm going to type npm install for I and then node telegram bot.api. As I do that, the package manager is going to go online, it's going to fetch some data, blah, 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 it's going to download it. And you can see that now I have this new folder called node modules that have a lot of the packages and the dependencies that this module needs in order to run. Okay, so that's great. And then I guess the next thing that we need is to create the actual file where we're going to write the code for this bot, for the logic of this bot. So what I'm going to do is we could just do this directly from code, but since we're trying to be a little hacky, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to type code on my terminal, and I'm going to write bot.js. And what that will do is that it will open Visual Studio Code on this folder. It will create an empty bot.js file, which if I save now, you can see that got saved directly here on my project folder. So that's great. And that also means that I'm ready here now to start writing code for I have the project ready to start writing the code for the logic that is going to drive my server, the back-end service that is going to drive the behavior of my bot. So let's write some code. What I'm going to do, just for the sake of making things easier and have less windows on my screen, I'm going to close the terminal that I use to initialize my project, etc. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a terminal that is going to be embedded in Visual Studio Code. That will make things a bit easier and less need for changing between screens. So if I go here to terminal and I start a new terminal, you can see that here, right on my back, I will open up this terminal that is embedded in Visual Studio, and that right now is in some random folder. So what I can do is I can go to my project folder by copying the route here and saying cd and then going into that route. And you can see that if I ls here, I can see the contents of my project. This will be great because now I can type here node blah 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 and start the project from there. I think maybe where I am is not great for this. So maybe the two windows actually, well, let's try to work with this for the time being. So, okay, so what is the first thing we're going to do? So we have here our bot, and the first thing that we're going to do is, well, we're going to use some of the sampled code that comes here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called the Telegram bot, which we're going to use to load that library that we just installed in our project. So Telegram bot is going to be now a variable that holds all the power of the library that we just created. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create another variable called the token. And here we're going to paste that token variable that we got from the bot father. That one that I told you it's secret and that you should never share and that should not be openly available on your code. So we will see how to do that, how to work properly with that variable. So don't worry too much about that right now. We will fix that later on. And then once we have that, then the next thing that we need to do is we need to actually connect this code to the server. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create another variable, which is going to be an instance of the bot and that's what we're going to be using to interface with the bot. And then we're going to write a new Telegram bot. We're going to use the token to connect, and then we're going to input these options as a JSON object, which is going to be that we want to be polling this robot. Polling means that we're going to be using HTTP, but we're going to be every so often requesting back and forth information so that we kind of maintain a live connection with the HTTP server that is running on the background, sort of. Okay. All right. So the basics of our robot, our bot backend are here. So I'm going to go to the terminal and I'm going to type CLS. I'm going to clear the screen and I'm going to type node bot.js. Can you see this? I cannot make this bigger. Bot.js. And as I do that, you're going to see that blah, 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 this is connected, etc., etc. So let's see if this is working. I'm going to go to my test bot and type blah, 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 blah. And nothing really happens. Why is nothing happening? Well, we actually have code that works and that is connected to the backend service, etc. Yet we haven't really written any logic whatsoever. So I guess the first thing that we need to do is we need to write some code to manage the logic between the conversation of the user and the conversation of the robot. That logic is going to be driven by events, pretty much in the same line as we saw in previous videos. So the way we do that is by defining for what type of events that we receive from the bot, how do we respond to different types of events. So how does that work? Well, for example, the simplest type of event is, so we define events by saying bot on, and then what type of event we're going to be responding. So for example, anytime we receive, there's an event called message, which gets triggered every single time we receive any message from any client. And so what we can do is we can write a rule to make sure that whenever we receive any message, then we do something about it. So the way we do that is we attach a behavior to this event, so the event message. And then attaching the behavior means passing a callback function that will be run whenever a message is received. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to define an inline function on the fly. This function, I know because of the helper text that is going to be given some information. It's going to be given the actual message that was triggered. And then I'm going to open and close curly brackets. And then here I will have the possibility of writing code that responds to that. So for example, let's say we're going to start by making an acknowledgement. So whenever I receive any message, I'm going to write here on my server. So right here, I'm going to write received a message. Okay. So super simple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my servers right now by pressing Ctrl+C. And then I'm just going to launch it again, node.bot.js. By doing that, I am connecting to the service again. And now I can go back to my bot chat and type a new message. And you can see that now I am detecting that I got a message from somewhere. So this, or this, or this, any single time I receive any kind of message from any user, I will be printing here on the terminal an acknowledgement of, yeah, I got something from someone. All right. But obviously, this is just not great. So, so probably what I want to do is I want to maybe read what the message was and then perhaps respond to that message as well. Before we go any further, let's actually take a look at what is being given to this function as information so that we can know what are we working with. So whenever I receive the message, I'm going to print an acknowledgement here to the terminal, but I'm also going to print a full breakdown of the message object that has been given to this function, right? And so I'm going to run my server again. I'm going to run my client again, and then I'm going to type here some stuff. Hello world. And then I'm going to type that in. And you can see if I move around, okay, this is not working anymore. I'm just going to open a real terminal. So I'm just going to open a real terminal here so that you can see better what is going on. So, all right. So here I'm going to type Node.js, and then I'm going to type this same message again. Hello world. What am I doing? Hello world. And then here we're going to see that the message object, which is a JSON object, contains all of this information. It contains an ID, it contains information of who sent it. So for example, it has my username, which is what I use on Telegram. It has information of whether if I am a bot or not. It has information about the chat room. So chat rooms have IDs, because remember, a bot can be talking to multiple people at the same time. It's not all about you. Bots are very promiscuous, if you will. And then it has information about me, it has the date as in the form of a timestamp, and it has a property called text, which is what has been passed here. So that's very interesting. I think we can use this as a way of responding to the robot. So for example, let's say that we want to write something that says, I received your message with the name. So for example, let's say I'm going to use hi, and then I'm going to type here the name of the user. Hi, message dot from dot first name. So, and then I'm going to write here, I received your message. And then I'm going to write here the message that was sent, which is message.text. Okay. So I'm going to write this here to the terminal. So, so here I'm going to run the bot again. And as I run the bot again, now I'm going to go here and say, hello again. And you can see that I am printing to the console on my server, hi Jose Luis, I received your message, hello again. So this is starting to become good. Oh, sorry, my head is on the way. So, hi Jose Luis, I received your message, hello again. You can see that here. But of course, what I don't want is this message to be printed on some obscure server. I want to send this back to whoever sent this as a response. So the way we're going to do that is here you can see that bot has an option called send message that needs the ID of the chat, which we can find here from chat.id and the message. So what we're going to do is I'm going to stop the server. I am going to be a bit more programmatic here, and I'm going to create a new variable called response, and then I'm going to type here the text that we want to send as a response. All right. And now what I can say is I'm going to write here bot.sendMessage, and you can see that as I autocomplete already gives me a lot of different options. Send audio, send contact, send game, send location. There's a lot of stuff that I can do with these APIs. So I'm just going to go for the simple send message. And then you see that it's asking me for the chat ID, which I can get from message.chat.id. All right. And then the response that I want to send, which I already created before as a variable here. So I can type here, just send this response that I created. All right. Are we ready for this? It's about to work. So, for example, let's run the server again, node.bot.js. And then now let's go to the bot and say, final test. And then as I do that, boom! Finally, the bot now responded. You can see we got an acknowledgement here, received the message, and here the bot is responding to me. Hi, Jose Luis, I received your message, final test. Woohoo! So we have a robot that now, we have a bot that can now respond to messages in a very basic way. Okay? All right, so this is working great. However, this is not very much in line with the general spirit of Telegram bots, which, as you saw before, are typically controlled or are typically interfaced with this language of using a / and using the command that you want to send the robot, the bot, to do something. Additionally, something that is not working great is that we are using the field message.text. But if the user, for some reason, had sent something that is not text, so audio, video, whatever, blah, blah, we may not get this message field. So I'm going to show you how to actually control much better whether if we are responding to text or other content, and then how to respond to different commands like hello, greet, echo, etc., etc. So let's take a look at implementing custom commands in your Telegram bot.